read a quote the other day that stopped me in my tracks. It said, "They taught you to believe genius comes from the mind, so you were trained to memorize more. But the mind has a ceiling. It loops inside what it already knows." And that made something click for me, something I've known for a long time, but hadn't put into words. You can read all the books, watch all the tutorials, master every method, but at some point, your mind hits its ceiling. It starts looping, repeating, recycling. You get the same ideas in slightly different packaging, and that's when creativity finally gets a chance to step in. See, I've noticed something about myself when I'm trying to solve a tough problem, especially in a room full of logical thinkers. Everyone comes up with the same 4 or 5 obvious solutions. They're smart, practical, and safe. But what I've learned to do is to wait. Because after I've slept on it, or taken a walk, or let my mind wander through something completely unrelated, I come back with what I now call knuckleball ideas. It's the weird one, the curveball, the one that makes everybody tilt their head and go, wait, what? And oddly enough, more often than not, that's the idea we end up choosing. Now, I didn't always speak up with these ideas. I used to think they were way too far out there. But they were too strange and too off the wall, never to be taken seriously. But over time, I've learned to trust that little voice in the back of my head, the one that whispers with intuition, this might actually be the right decision. Now, don't get me wrong, these ideas don't always land. Sometimes the team doesn't pick it. Sometimes it's too far out there. But even then, there's usually a nugget of truth inside of it that unlocks something else. And that something else becomes the actual solution we run with. So I've learned this. With the right audience, people who are genuinely trying to solve a problem and aren't there to judge, you can pitch a knuckleball idea. And when the room is open, when people are willing to listen, magic happens. But here's the thing. Knuckleball ideas don't come from people who live on repeat. They don't come from doing the same thing every week, from watching the same shows, from eating the same meals, vacationing in the same spot every year, and living a life of comfortable monotony. Knuckleball ideas come from when your brain is interrupted, when it gets a fresh data point from something unexpected, when it's exposed to beauty or chaos or wonder, or even just randomness. Look, I work at an engineering firm, and it's full of brilliant, logical, linear thinkers. People who are phenomenal at solving clean, well-defined problems. But when a problem needs creativity, when it requires something new, something untested, that's when thinking outside the box not only becomes essential, but exactly what we need. That's when the knuckleball idea makes its debut. And usually it starts a process, a few iterations, a back and forth, and suddenly we're looking at a real workable solution that didn't exist before. Here's what I've learned. You can be incredibly smart, world class in your field, but if you only rely on what you already know, you will always be limited by the boundaries of your mind. True innovation comes when you're willing to shove your intellect aside for a second and say, what if I let my intuition take the lead? Because when you pair intelligence with curiosity, when you mix expertise with experimentation, when you trust your knuckleball ideas enough to throw them out into the room, you start to operate in a space that's beyond memorized knowledge. You create things that haven't been built before. You unlock possibilities your mind couldn't reach on its own. So here's my challenge to you. Don't just sharpen your mind. Stretch it. Feed it with strange stories and new places, unexpected conversations. Let it get bored enough to be creative. Give it permission to wander. Because the real genius isn't in what you know. It's in what you're willing to imagine and trust before it makes sense.